Welcome to the Moss Adams presentation, System Planning and the Changing ERP Landscape. Before we get started, we have a short video that will improve your participation in today's session.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us. We're pleased to present another in our ongoing series of continuing professional education webcasts to help companies and individuals conquer challenges as they plan for what's next. Our presentation will start in a few moments. Before we begin, here are a few things to keep in mind. You can customize how you both view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can also adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons, each relating to a different aspect of our session. You can download the group attendance sheet and a PDF copy of today's slides from the slide deck and handouts widget to the right of the slide view. You can ask our presenter questions during the webcast by typing a question in the Q&A window below the slide view and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions during the presentation or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty during today's presentation, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session will offer you 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the requirements as specified by the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% of the polling questions, which we'll ask throughout today's presentation. To respond to a poll, click the button next to your answer. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget to open a PDF file that you can save to your computer. Don't worry if you can't download your PDF certificate today. We'll email a copy to you in 2 weeks. If you're attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our attendance sheet to receive CPE credit. The attendance sheet is available in the slide deck and handouts widget. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. Also note that CPE credit can be awarded only to participants registered as themselves and isn't available to participants who view the on-demand version. As a reminder, the presentation you're about to see isn't legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
Presenting today is Labi Rabiu, the Managing Director of Moss Adams Enterprise Solutions Practice. Labi, we appreciate you being with us today, and so perhaps you can tell us a little about yourself to get us started.
Yes, thank you, Tanya, and thank you everyone for attending this presentation. I am Labi Rabiu, Managing Director in the Enterprise Systems Consulting Practice at Moss Adams. And in my role, I work with organizations throughout their enterprise systems deployment cycle, from the time they start assessing their needs to planning for the system acquisition, helping them manage the vendor selection process, and all the way through implementation. And once the system is implemented, optimizing it and improving processes around it. So that's what I've done, and I've been doing this over the last 25 years. I've implemented several ERP applications from Sage line of products to Epicor, SAP Business One, Microsoft Dynamics, and NetSuite. So over the years, I have gained a lot of insight into the changes and developments in the ERP space. And I'm going to be sharing some of that with us today. At the end of today's presentation, you will be able to differentiate between ERP tiers. You'll be able to discuss many of the current ERP platforms in use today and key considerations for each. The goal is also to enable you at the end of this presentation, evaluate the pros and cons of a pre-built industry solution versus one that is configured and adapted to specific industry. And you should also be able to participate in conversation about current trends impacting the ERP landscape. We'll start with a quick overview of enterprise systems and talk about the types of enterprise systems. Then we'll turn our focus to the ERP type of enterprise system, what it is, the different categories or tiers, the deployment options available for ERP systems, how they are licensed, including the concept of freeware versus proprietary systems. And we'll also explore how generic systems are different from those with a specific industry focus, and what factors to consider in choosing an ERP system for a specific industry. And finally, we will conclude by discussing some of the latest technology trends in the ERP landscape. So, what are enterprise systems? Enterprise systems make it possible to integrate and automate business processes. And by so doing, they provide three main benefits. Number one is they enable the flow of information between a company and its business partners. And that could be customers, vendors, third-party logistic providers. They provide data for management to mine and make decisions on. And they generate reporting information to share with company owners, stakeholders, employees, government, and the general public. And I've identified here 4 of the types of enterprise systems that we often see. One is Customer Relationship Management Solutions, abbreviated as CRM. Human Capital Management, HCM. Financial Planning and Analysis, FP&A. And Enterprise Resource Planning, ERP. Enterprise systems may overlap, and you will often see that most ERP solutions, for example, have CRM, they have a native HR, they have basic budgeting and analytics features. And I also like to point out that the types of enterprise systems that I've identified here are just broad categorizations, because some of these can be further subdivided. FP&A systems, for example, can be grouped into such categories as financial planning, corporate performance management, and BI analytics. Our focus today will mostly be on ERP systems, the last type you see on the list here. We're not going to spend too much time on the other types of enterprise systems. What I would like to do instead is just give you a quick flavor of what functional areas they cover and some of the systems we run into when we perform systems evaluation for our clients. And then we'll shift our focus back to ERP systems. So let's start with CRM type of enterprise systems. They're basically focused on anything to do with sales process. The main functional areas that we see CRM systems address include leads management, anything from qualifying contacts to managing leads and opportunity. Sales force automation, that would be sales forecasting, sales analysis, and sales employee performance evaluation. And customer engagement, managing new and existing accounts and engaging with your customers either proactively, as in when you do sales and marketing campaigns, or reactively when you respond to their inquiries. And there are many systems in the CRM space. Salesforce.com is one that is well known as a CRM cloud solution with significant market share. But there are other well-known systems, including Dynamics CRM. Microsoft came out with the cloud version of this a few years ago in the form of Dynamics 365. Others include Oracle Siebel, SAP CRM, and Sugar CRM. I also have NetSuite on this list because NetSuite has a robust CRM solution as part of a suite of integrated ERP modules. And this is just to name a few of the solutions we see out there. As I share examples of these systems, it is important to emphasize that this is not an exhaustive list. It's not a ranking either, or even an endorsement of any system, but rather intended to show you just a few familiar examples that we see on our shortlist when we evaluate CRM, HCM, FP&A, or even ERP systems for our clients. HCM Systems, also known as Human Resource Information System, so they're either abbreviated as HCM, Human Capital Management, or HRIS, Human Resource Information Systems. They're focused on anything to do with employees, from the time you recruit them to onboarding, tracking performance, and compensating them. Some also have learning management features for sharing CPE or mandatory compliance-related content with employees. For the HCM systems market, there isn't a dominant leader. Each system that we see out there has its own area of focus. So, for example, a system like SAP SuccessFactors does a lot more around compensation management. Oracle PeopleSoft is known for its strong localization features, and that would be the ability to meet HR requirements for different localities. Taleo, another Oracle product, is focused mainly on recruitment, onboarding, and with some performance management capabilities as well. Workday is a system that's gained a lot of traction in the HCM space. It offers both HR and financial management on the same platform, but it's better known for its HR strength. So we have a whole bunch of solutions with no dominant player. Some HR systems also do come with payroll management capabilities, although I might add here that the trend that we see in the industry is more of payroll outsourcing. And that's because outsourced payroll service providers are able to meet most payroll management reporting and compliance requirements at much reduced cost than if you were to do it in-house yourself. FP&A systems are focused on financial planning, corporate performance management, and BI analytics. And by corporate performance management, we are talking about forecasting, modeling, financial close, and consolidation. The FP&A systems landscape is a crowded one, with some of the systems focused on more than one functional niche. And you can see that from the list I have here. Hyperion, for example, is known for its ability to support large enterprise planning and modeling scenarios and doing what-if analysis. But Oracle has now made it available for the mid-market on the NetSuite platform as PBCS, Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service. Cognos and SAP Business Objects are similarly known for their ability to support mid to large enterprises, but they are better known for reporting and analytics. There's some other mid-tier solutions like Host Analytics and Adaptive Insights that are focused more on the mid-market, and they do planning, consolidation, and reporting. Anaplan is another one that we see. It's similarly focused on business planning and performance management. Tableau, on the other hand, is unique for its data visualization and BI capabilities. You might be surprised to see Microsoft on this list, and that is because we often underestimate the native forecasting and BI capabilities of good old Excel. And there's also Microsoft SQL, which has a lot of data management capabilities via analysis cubes and SQL reporting services. In fact, I would argue that Microsoft products are perhaps the most widely used BI analysis solutions out there. So before we continue to talk about the ERP type of enterprise systems, I thought we should pause here and take a quick poll just to get a sense of your plans regarding enterprise systems. Tanya?
Thank you, Labi. So is your company planning to implement, replace, or upgrade an enterprise system? Please select all that apply. So maybe you're planning in the next 6 to 12 months, or maybe looking a little further out, 12 to 24 months for that. Or maybe you recently completed an implementation or an upgrade. Maybe you're in a situation where you currently don't use one, but are considering what the options are for your organizations. Or you just don't have insight into what's being planned for your company, and maybe this is simply an interesting topic for you. So please select the button next to your answer and be sure and press submit so we can be sure and capture your answer. And then as a reminder, if you find that you have questions along the way, maybe questions specifically with regard to your implementation, your planning, or what might have you as the topics emerge, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A feature, and we'll get to those questions. So Labi, I'm going to go ahead and leave this open for maybe another 10 seconds, and then we'll close the polls and take a look at our results. And we'll close that in 3, 2, 1, and we'll turn it over to you for our results.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. So it looks, thank you all for your response to the poll question. It looks like about roughly 44% of us are planning to implement, replace, or upgrade an enterprise system in the next 6 months. I hope you find the information in today's presentation helpful with your project. We've done a quick overview of enterprise systems, and I've touched on 3 of the types. We'll now turn our focus to ERP systems and spend more time discussing this type of enterprise system. And the reason for this is ERP systems are at the core of enterprise systems. They make it possible for businesses to integrate accounting and supply chain operations. They're usually modular, meaning they come in modules. So for example, we see core financial module, which would be your general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, bank management, fixed asset management, and project accounting. They do come with supply chain modules, which would include your sales and distribution, procurement, and inventory management. Pretty much most established ERP systems do support these modules. Manufacturing module comes in some, especially when there is a supply chain vertical focus. And while there may be other modules, these are the main ones that we see in most ERP systems. Now, as I've noted before, there is some overlap between ERP and other types of enterprise systems. Some ERP vendors do have embedded native CRM, HCM, and FP&A capabilities. NetSuite is a very good example of this. Some of the vendors offer these other types of enterprise systems as a separate suite of applications or support it via a third party. So when we talk about ERP systems, people do use the term loosely sometimes to refer to enterprise systems generally. Just something to bear in mind. Having described ERP systems, let's now focus on the ERP landscape, where we're going to spend most of our time on this presentation. We'll talk about ERP Tiers and why they're classified as such. We'll discuss the deployment models available for ERP systems and how they are licensed. We'll also talk about industry focus, how you distinguish between a horizontal and a vertical solution. There are 3 tiers of ERP systems. And broadly speaking, systems are classified into these tiers based on their functional capability. They're classified based on their scalability. And they also classify based on the typical revenue of the organizations that use them. And we also see them classified as tiers based on the cost of implementation. Tier 1 ERP systems have deeper capabilities. They are typically focused on large enterprise and upper mid-market entities. They can support unlimited organization structure. They support higher user count, global revenue base, and they're usually more expensive. The typical total cost of ownership we see for Tier 1 systems start from about $500,000 to $1 million plus. And that's just the starting price. I know companies implementing Tier 1 solutions in phased rollout covering several years. So they're usually complex solutions. The dominant players here are SAP, Oracle, and Infor. These three have cornered the Tier 1 market, and they've done that over the years by acquiring different applications and consolidating them under their brand umbrella. Microsoft also plays in this category with Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, previously known as Dynamics AX. Tier 2 systems, on the other hand, have modest capabilities, and they're usually focused on small to mid-market organizations. They cost on average between $50,000 and $500,000. And this is just, I'm just giving you a rough order of magnitude, as there are clearly outliers out there costing less than the low end, or even some costing more than the high end that I just gave you. The other thing is there are many of them. There are many Tier 2 ERP systems. And what you have here is just a quick flavor, and it's neither, as I've said, an exhaustive list, nor is it in any particular order. Tier 3 ERP systems have the least capability of the tiers. They are typically, with some exceptions, least expensive to implement and are usually targeted at smaller organizations. I've included a few examples here. Sage does very well in this market. Sage has a lot of Tier 3 products focused on specific regions of the world. I would include in this category some of the freeware solutions out there, and we'll talk some more about freeware ERP systems later on. Now, there is a debate on whether one should include QuickBooks in this category. I take the stand that because QuickBooks has limited controls, it should be properly classified as an accounting system, though I'll admit that the functionality in some of the products may actually justify including them sometimes as Tier 3 ERP. So continuing on the ERP landscape, let's look at another way of viewing ERP landscape, and that is the deployment model. Here we are talking about how an ERP system is situated, accessed, and maintained. The traditional model used to be one where the ERP system and its servers and the entire infrastructure related to it are situated and maintained in-house, and that is the on-premise deployment option. This deployment method is rapidly losing market share. The trend we see is more and more organizations moving towards the cloud deployment model, which we'll talk about subsequently. And they're doing this in order to save cost. But on-premise deployments are still fairly common, especially with deeper verticals like constructions, aerospace, defense, financial services, healthcare, and other industries that have been slower to adopt the cloud model, either due to the prevalence of deeply entrenched legacy systems or because of regulatory and internal policies for safeguarding customer data that favors doing so in-house. The other deployment option we see often is one where the hosting of the ERP system and its related infrastructure is outsourced to a third-party hosting service provider. This is the hosted model. In this scenario, an organization has its own dedicated separate platform with the service provider, and that's why they refer to it as single tenant. And so in this scenario, the system is typically accessed through a VPN, a remote desktop or terminal server, or through an application called Citrix. In a hosted model, customers may be on separate versions of the ERP system. Now, compare this with the deployment option, which is the fastest growing, the cloud. Cloud ERP systems are multi-tenant, meaning the same version of the software and supporting infrastructure serves multiple customers. All customers in this case are seamlessly sharing the same application instance, usually accessed via a web browser anywhere in the world. The upgrade process is also seamlessly done by the vendor. Cloud ERP deployments usually result in tremendous cost savings on hardware maintenance, software updates, fixes, database maintenance, and other labor costs. I've identified some cloud-based ERP systems here. NetSuite is the market leader in this category, and is also the fastest growing. As I've noted, the traditional on-premise model is rapidly giving way to the cloud model. But the term cloud, as it's used with respect to ERP systems, can be quite confusing. I mean, you often hear that a system is hosted in the cloud, which would seem to suggest that hosted and cloud are the same. So the question really is, when is a system true cloud? In the next slide, I will describe the subtle differences between the so-called cloud and what is really true cloud. So to do this, let's use a case study of the various hosting options available for Microsoft Dynamics 365. And full credit to Microsoft for this slide. So you could have a basic hosting service where a company outsources its ERP infrastructure, but the company is still responsible for the ERP application, the database, and operating system. In effect, you are accessing the system hosted by the service provider remotely, but you're still responsible for the day-to-day maintenance of the application and any related system or middleware and underlying database, including upgrade of all of this. So this entails outsourcing just the server infrastructure, and that's why it's called infrastructure as a service. This kind of hosting service is not true cloud. A hosting service may go beyond this. It may go beyond outsourcing just the server infrastructure. You could have a hosting service where an organization only maintains its own version of the ERP application and database and upgrading of this, while the service provider is responsible for everything else. So this would be a step up above infrastructure as a service. But it's still not true cloud. It is called platform as a service. True cloud is one where all the tenants are on the same version of the ERP application. And the upgrade process is seamlessly performed by the vendor. In this case, you've outsourced everything with the application, the database, the operating system platform to the vendor. And you only need a browser to access your data. So let's now pause to take another quick poll of the type of, focusing on the type of deployment model your organization may be using for its ERP. Tanya?
Thank you. So what type of deployment model does your organization use for its ERP system or accounting software? Are you on-premise, hosted, really in the cloud, a combination of on-premise, hosted, or cloud, or you don't know or you're not sure? As a reminder, this is the second of our 4 polling questions today. So if you're joining us live, you can receive CPE for answering 3 of the 4 questions and attending for 50 minutes of today's presentation. I've had a couple of questions come in through our queue, and if you think that I haven't gotten to your question yet, it's probably likely that we're going to touch on your topic here in just a few minutes, so I ask you to please be patient. So with that, we'll go ahead and give our folks maybe another 5 more seconds, and then we'll take a look at our results. And 3, 2, 1, and let's turn it over to you, Labi, to look at our results today.
Oh, thank you. So I see here that 17.5% of us do cloud ERP deployment. It's not surprising because this is still a model that's gaining market share. And as I said, it's the fastest growing deployment model that we see out there. And I hope my explanations have clarified the differences between what is on-premise, what is hosting, and true cloud. Now, with respect to cloud, there are hybrid variants of cloud ERP systems out there. I thought I should stress that a company could be in the cloud and still have its own dedicated private platform in the cloud. And you would usually see this if the company wants to pay a premium for enhanced services, such as being able to control their upgrade schedule, having a higher transaction concurrent operation, or having a higher data size limit. But the company will still be on the same version as everybody else, and upgrade will still be done seamlessly by the vendor. So just something to bear in mind, that there could be hybrid variants of true cloud. So let's look at the ERP landscape from another dimension, and that is how they are licensed. We typically make a distinction between proprietary, also known as commercial ERP systems, and open source ERP systems. With commercial ERP, you're renting the copyright from the vendor, and you either pay an upfront cost for the license, usually called a perpetual license, or you pay a monthly subscription. Perpetual license is most common with on-premise model, while monthly subscription is the standard for cloud ERP. A hosted ERP could be either of these. It could be either licensed perpetually or structured as monthly subscription payments. Open source ERP systems, unlike commercial ERP systems, are those that anyone can download at no cost and modify for their own use. Believe me, there are systems like that out there, and they are called freeware. And they've been around for a while, but have never quite gained traction. And that's because they raise a number of legal and security concerns. I had a client of mine for whom I was evaluating open source ERP systems several years ago, but they had to drop the idea in the face of stiff resistance from their auditors. So if the source code is freely available for anyone to change and modify, how do you control that? How do you enforce compliance with proper change management? And there's also the legal question of who owns the copyright if anyone is free to make changes and improvements to the software. So for these reasons, auditors have a problem with this kind of systems. I mean, they raise major compliance questions. So here on the slide, you see examples of some of the open source ERP systems that are available. And it's worth noting that some of these vendors also do have commercially licensed versions, which says a lot. So we'll now discuss industry-specific requirements for selecting an ERP system. But before we do that, let's take a quick poll of the biggest challenges an organization faces in selecting an ERP system. I'm interested in your take on this.
Great. So in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges your organization faces or has faced in terms of new enterprise solutions? And this is one of those polls where you can select all that apply. Has it been commitment or buy-in from top management? Has it been re-engineering of existing processes or integration of the ERP with other business information systems? Perhaps selection and management of consultants and employees has been a pain point for you or a pain point for your considerations. Maybe the training of employees on the new system, trust or knowledge issues with the cloud, or adapting enterprise solutions to your industry. So any of those that apply to you, please select the button and press submit. And while we're waiting for our audience, Labi, we had a great question come in that really ties into what we're seeing with the cloud and your discussion on that. So the question comes from Greg, who asks, some vendors are not necessarily very transparent about what type of cloud they are. How can we know for sure, or what do you suggest we ask to know?
Good question. That's a good question. And that's the main reason why I try to make that distinction between what is true cloud and what is so-called cloud. Here are the questions to ask. Are all their customers on the same version of the ERP system? If the answer to this is no, then they are not true cloud. The other question to ask is, was the system built from ground up as a cloud solution, or was it recently migrated to the cloud? If the answer is no, then it's likely not true cloud. And finally, the upgrade process. And this is also tied to the question of whether the clients are all on the same version. If you have to be involved in the upgrade process in any way, then the solution most likely is not true cloud.
Great. I have one more. I want to go ahead and close the polls, but we had just one more as we're on that. So Zilda asks, with a true cloud solution, is it typical that a company can no longer access historical data if they change ERP programs in the future? And how do they handle that?
I've heard that concern being expressed by customers, and the simple answer is no. Most robust true cloud solutions offer means of exporting data for however many years you've been on the system in a way that you can completely templatize it and migrate it to another solution if you choose to. So that concern that's often expressed that once you're with a cloud ERP vendor, you are locked in, you can't get out. That's not what we see.
Great, great. Well, let's take a look at our responses, and we'll get you back on track to start looking at industry-specific solutions.
So I see here that this is very interesting. So if you believe that adapting enterprise solutions to your industry, and that's 28.7% of you, is the biggest challenge, then my next couple of slides would speak to this and highlight some of the reasons and considerations for selecting, and some of the reasons why we see some systems play in certain industries, and considerations for selecting an ERP system for your specific industry. And for the others, I agree. I mean, these challenges are very hard to rank. I mean, we have 50.9% says integration with other ERP systems is the biggest challenge, and that is one that we often see. Re-engineering processes is another one that the stats out there have borne out. And commitment by top management, which would be change management process for the ERP system. I mean, one of the reasons why ERP systems deployments do fail is lack of proper change management and commitment by the stakeholder. So these are all true statements, but we're going to focus for now on how to, what considerations you should have in adapting an enterprise system to your industry. So we typically make a distinction between a horizontal and a vertical ERP system. Horizontal systems are adaptable and configurable across industries. That would be a system that has broad appeal across industries, and you can modify it or customize it seamlessly to support your needs. Compare this with a vertical ERP system, which are those that are built specifically for certain industries. And the question is, which one are you better off with? Are you better off with a horizontal or vertical ERP system? And my take is, it depends on your unique requirements. I've identified in the next few slides examples of unique industry requirements that may drive a system shortlist. And I also provide examples of some of the systems we see on our shortlist when we evaluate clients' needs for specific industries. In the interest of time, I've only chosen to discuss a few key sectors, but I'll be happy to discuss offline any questions you may have about what system may be applicable in your specific sector. So we'll start with retail. For the retail industry, the typical requirements that we see are CRM and marketing, order management, the ability to collaborate with suppliers, and inventory management is also standard. We sometimes see e-commerce requirements. If the company has a retail store, you may also see a need for an integrated point of sale system. The tier 1 systems we see a lot here are SAP ERP. It's a horizontal and adaptable solution across industry. We see Oracle EBS, which is likewise horizontal and adaptable. And we also see Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, as well as Info Distribution Suite. And like a recurring decimal, you will see these systems that I've mentioned for tier 1 here, sometimes with different products. And that's because these four really are the dominant systems for the tier 1 category. For tier 2 solutions for retail, we have seen some systems gain traction lately, but we also have established players. A typical shortlist for retail may include Epicor, which does well with retail and distribution. NetSuite does well with retail because of its integrated e-commerce, its CRM, its order management, and billing management capabilities. Great Plains is often on our shortlist because of its breadth of modules, which retailers desire, including its sales order processing and purchase order processing modules. And we sometimes see SAP Business One, which is the entry-level SAP solution, because it has pretty good sales processing and warehouse management features that retailers often desire. And there are numerous other systems. Again, remember, this is not an exhaustive list. For discrete manufacturing, the typical requirements we document for our clients include manufacturing planning, anything from sales forecasting to MRP, manufacturing production, which is the ability to support multi-level bill of material, track work in progress, and support outsourced manufacturing, among others. Manufacturing management is another key requirement category that we see for discrete manufacturing, and that would be the ability to manage or control manufacturing outcomes such as quality control, engineering change management, shop floor control, and job costing. So these are some of the key requirements that we see drive the selection process for discrete manufacturing businesses. For Tier 1, the key players are your usual suspects. SAP Business All-in-One, now known as S/4HANA, has multiple solutions for discrete manufacturing. Oracle EBS does well here. Barn, a product acquired by Info and rebranded as Info LN, does well with semiconductors as well as heavy industries. For Tier 2, some of the systems we see often include Plex Systems, a small vendor based out of Michigan that does well with heavy industries. We see QAD. This vendor is based out of California and has made a conscious decision to target the manufacturing sector, and it does well among smaller organizations with discrete and sometimes process manufacturing needs. Epicor does well here too. And NetSuite, with its recent acquisition of IQET and its new advanced manufacturing capability, we're beginning to see it feature often on our list for manufacturing businesses. And there are other systems that I haven't mentioned yet. So I mean, Expandable is on this list as well because it's a small vendor that's been around for a while and it does a decent job with manufacturing for the smaller manufacturers. Process manufacturers often have the same requirements as discrete manufacturers, plus a need for the ERP system to support complex units of measure, a need to support recipe-based bill of material formulation, a need to support lot tracking and yield tracking. Those are key drivers that our clients often identify as their requirements of a process manufacturing-centric ERP system. And on our short list for Tier 1, we often see SAP S/4HANA with its different micro-verticals for process manufacturing. So S/4HANA supports oil and gas, food and bev, chemical, etc. Oracle JD Edwards features often on our list for process manufacturing, as does Lawson, now known as Info M3. And of course, there is Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, which is highly configurable for process manufacturing. For Tier 2 systems for process manufacturing, we often see QAD, Sage Business Cloud Enterprise Management, that used to be known as Sage X3, Syspro, a small vendor that comes up on our short list for smaller process manufacturer, especially when there's a need for recipe formulation. And DCOM, it's a system that's focused deeply on the process manufacturing vertical. We see it with clients who have adhesive or sealant kind of business in that process manufacturing sub vertical. Another industry that we want to explore key requirements is life science and biotech. And here we see batch or lot traceability to support product recall, regulatory compliance for SOX, for 21 CFR Part 11, and here we are talking about electronic record keeping and audit trail. Sunshine Act compliance, and that is the ability to track and report on aggregate expenditure on healthcare providers. That's a compliance reporting requirement that life sciences and biotech companies require of an ERP system, especially if they're paying providers. Quality management is often a requirement. The ability to easily integrate data with an outsourced service provider, such as a contract manufacturer or a third-party logistic distributor. And project accounting is frequently a requirement of this sector, and that is the ability to track project cost from the preclinical phase all the way through the clinical trial phases. And for Tier 1, it's your usual suspect. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. For Tier 2, we see quite a few systems. We see QAD, we see Sage Business Cloud, Enterprise Management, we see GP sometimes, and it has a presence because of its SQL database and ease of integration via web services. NetSuite features because of its project management, extensive audit, I'm talking about extensive audit trail and audit tracking of changes to the system. It also features because of its configurability to support regulatory compliance reports. Appian ROS ERP also does come up on our shortlist sometimes because it does very well with formulae and recipe-based biopharmaceuticals. And these are just a few examples. For the high-tech, and I'm grouping loosely, very loosely, semiconductors, medical equipment, telecom, industrial automation, and other equipment-based type of businesses. And there are key requirements here: in-house or outsourced manufacturing, complex supply chain management, contract management for warranty services, return and defect management, and deferred revenue recognition, especially for those that bundle product, software, and services where multi-element arrangement may be applicable. And systems that do well here for Tier 1 are SAP S/4HANA, Oracle EBS, Infor, and Dynamics 365. Tier 2, we see Glovia, a Fujitsu product that we sometimes see in Tier 1. It has a heavy focus on industrial machinery type of business. Epicor, IQMX, and Plex Systems are others we often see on our shortlist. And NetSuite is also gaining traction here with its ongoing improvement to its manufacturing capabilities. For professional services, typical requirements will be a need for a robust CRM or ability to integrate with an existing CRM solution, such as Salesforce, a strong project management, resource management, time and expense management, billing management, and deferred revenue recognition, just to name a few of typical PSA-type business requirements. The Tier 1 shortlist could include SAP S/4HANA or Oracle PeopleSoft. And for Tier 2, NetSuite with its service resource planning and open air and project management and billing capability is a regular feature on our shortlist. Intact features prominently as well because of its billing management, as does a system called Deltec, which has a PS focus. It has a PS and project focus, and we see it quite frequently when we're evaluating system for professional services type of business. Acumatica is another system that we've seen gaining traction, and I will definitely put Workday on this list as well. For agribusiness, typical requirements are payroll and workforce management for labor law compliance, grower accounting and farm accounting management, quality control, real-time inventory management, and warehouse and transportation management. For Tier 1, we see Infor M3, JD Edwards, Dynamics 365, and sometimes SAP S/4HANA. And for Tier 2, we see Infor Cloud Suite Industrial, especially the product known as Sightline. We do see Dynamics 365 Business Edition, and not to be confused with Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operation. This is the product that used to be known as NAV. We see Sage Business Cloud Enterprise Management, which is Sage X3. And Just Foods, it's a vendor that I believe is based out of Canada, that has a vertical focus on food and beverage sector, including the agribusiness, as well as a system called Linkfresh. For construction and property management businesses, typical requirements would be job costing and a need for managing profitability around jobs, fixed asset management, billing management to support progress billing for construction, or rental billing in the case of property management, labor and HR management, as well as payroll benefits management. Tier 1, again, your usual suspect. And Tier 2, we see Viewpoint. We see Sage Timberline. It's a Sage product, recently rebranded as Sage for construction businesses. There's Procore and Dexter and Cheney. And Yardi. Yardi in particular is focused on almost exclusively on property management. For not-for-profit organizations, typical requirements we see are fund accounting and grant management, budgeting and financial planning, spend management, grant fund donor reporting and analytics, as well as HR and compensation management. And the Tier 1 systems, SAP ERP and Oracle EBS, that's Oracle Financials. And for Tier 2, Intact does very well here. NetSuite, Acumatica, and Workday. Those are the systems we see most frequently for not-for-profit in the Tier 2 category. Next, we'll discuss the recent technology trends in the ERP space. But before we do that, let's take our last poll. Tanya?
Thank you so much. So what ERP trends have informed your selection and implementation decisions most significantly? Again, a question where you can select all that apply to you. Is it data analytics and the ability to use information to identify opportunities and make decisions in real time? Or perhaps improvements to cloud ERP systems? Perhaps social media integration into ERP systems or ERP systems designed to manage specific business processes? Or finally, supply chain improvements made possible by the Internet of Things connectivity. And maybe it's none of the above, but please select the button next to your answer and press submit. Your answer can be recorded. I will mention we have a lot of questions in the queue, so we'll be wrapping up here shortly, and we will make time for your questions, so hopefully you can join us for that piece. So Labi, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and we'll take a look at the results.
So I see 53.3% of us selected data analytics, 28.3 cloud ERP, social media 5.7. Yeah, these are all very important trends. And I would like to now wrap up this presentation by giving you an insight into some of these technology trends in the ERP world. Mobile enablement. Let's start with this trend. Mobile apps are everywhere, and naturally, ERP vendors are ensuring more user engagement by providing ERP apps on mobile devices, especially for those areas that require real-time access of data. And the most common area where we've seen mobile apps being deployed by ERP systems include field service for sales and tracking opportunities. We see inventory barcode scanning and real-time visibility to inventory status. Approval routing for purchase requisitions are now very common on most ERP apps. So a user can now enter purchase requests on their smartphone and route it to their manager, who can approve real-time on his or her smartphones. Employee expense approval is another one that's widely supported by most ERP systems. You can scan your receipt on the phone and route the expense report to your manager for approval. And for field service operations, we see field technicians now using apps to diagnose a problem from a knowledge base, and that would prescribe troubleshooting solutions, and then the technician can bill the customer all remotely from a mobile device. And we are seeing more and more of this kind of features on ERP apps. And there's no doubt that the trend will continue. Robust analytics is another trend, robust analytics and artificial intelligence. Robust analytics is at the heart of intelligent ERP systems. And with robust analytics, ERP systems are capable of learning from exception, adapting business rules, and recommending next best steps for you, so you don't have to think about it, through artificial intelligence or machine learning. A good example of a system that does it is SAP S/4HANA with its proprietary operational database and in-memory computing platform, which allows real-time analytics. And most ERP vendors out there now offer some form of robust analytics as part of their core deployment. One example we've seen this frequently is in production planning and scheduling. Another area we've seen it is use of sophisticated modeling techniques and predictive analytics, what-if scenarios in financial planning and forecasting. And I would say cloud ERP vendors are leaders in providing real-time global analytics on any aspect of financial and operational processes. Another trend that we see is omnichannel support, and this is an interesting one. Retailers want customers to have the same experience across platforms. Whether you are interacting with a retailer in store, on the web, or on a mobile device, or if you're calling into a call center, they want customers to have the same consistent experience. And they're doing this by leveraging the ERP system. They're leveraging the ERP system to achieve this. Some ERP vendors now provide a front-end e-commerce platform that's embedded with BI analytics to give customers the same personalized experience. So I could, for example, go on my mobile device, I could order a product, I could save my shopping cart, and then go to the store, and the clerk opens up my order and can see my shopping cart and fulfill it right away, and thus giving me the same consistent, highly personalized experience. And they're leveraging the ERP systems to do this. I mean, this is just an example of ways ERP systems are being leveraged to support sales process across diverse channels. And here again, cloud-based ERP vendors typically do a better job of this than on-premise vendors. And that's because they have the perfect platform for it. They tend to have the e-commerce front end and the internet-ready features for omnichannel support. Another trend that we've taken note of lately is the applicability of the blockchain technology to ERP systems. ERP vendors are still at the beginning stages of this, but they've started leveraging blockchain technology to foster greater security and global collaboration. With blockchain, you can have true self-validation and move away from subjective to objective truth. Data can be shared amongst organizations in a business network and fully secured. And what this means is blockchain technology can support the concept of a single shared ledger that can be accessed securely by all parties in the network, which has the potential, if you think about it, to really revolutionize ERP transactions. And let me give you an example of this. If you think about supply chain logistics, by applying blockchain technology, you can streamline and secure electronic data interchange between organizations. So today, ERP vendors each has their own separate ways of validating movement of goods through the supply chain, from ordering to shipping to tracking individual parts, all the way through invoicing. And what that means is each company trusts its own ERP system. The customer trusts his, the vendor trusts his. With blockchain and shared ledger, you can remove those silos and allow common visibility to everything happening in the supply chain, and do it in a secure way. Another example I can share here is that's been widely discussed is self-executing contracts, where you could actually determine the contractual terms and conditions automatically in the system, and the system can determine when these conditions have been met without you requiring any kind of intermediary. And yet another example that's already applicable here via cryptocurrency is payment transactions. Global transaction validation could be done so that payments can be received from a customer or made to a vendor without going through any intermediary financial institution. And those are ways that we see blockchain technology being leveraged. I mean, now, this is still pretty much at the beginning stages, but vendors are all actively investing in R&D towards transforming and revolutionizing their ERP system by making sure it fully supports, it fully adapts to the new technology landscape that we have for blockchain. And with that, we've come to the end of our presentation. And I don't know, Tanya, do we have enough time for some questions?
So, Labi, here's what I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and ask our audience to please take a minute to complete the survey, tell us how we did, how we can improve, and content to help us develop our future offerings. And while they're doing that, if you don't mind, and they can stay on, I'm going to go ahead and have you cover some of the questions that we received because we had some fantastic questions come in. We will also send these out to everyone who asked them so that if they are no longer on the call with us, they can go ahead and have the answers to these. So the first one is there consideration to balance the potential risk of relying on a single ERP for all four areas, CRM, HCM, FP&A, and ERP of business processes versus diversifying the ERP company implementations to hedge against potential troubles at an ERP company and or to become familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of each ERP? Does that make sense what they're asking?
It does.
I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And it's something that's usually driven by the client's requirements. And I would say here that cost consideration is one powerful factor that drives clients to decide to go with a system that fully supports the enterprise system types that we discussed versus going for one that supports that as an integrated suite of separate applications. And another factor that may be worth noting is the depth of the requirement. If you are in a deep vertical, for example, and I'll give the example of professional services where CRM requirements may be a huge factor, you may want to have a separate CRM solution that is dedicated to managing everything to do with the sales leads generation process all the way through Salesforce automation, as opposed to having it in the ERP system. But as I've noted, most ERP systems provide these features, and it's all going to depend on the depth of your requirement, your appetite for cost, because having separate suite of applications would definitely cost more.
Great. Well, we're going to go ahead and close out now. There's still several we didn't get to, but we will follow up outside of our broadcast. So thank you so much all for joining us. And Labi, thank you once again for just a wealth of information.
Thank you, everyone.